Today we have a very special guest who probably needs no introduction. His name is Don Kagan, of the CEO and president of Kagan's Inc. He's one of the most famous coin dealers in the country. In fact, his family business is the oldest family-owned numismatic business in the country. And so, Don, it's just a real pleasure to have you today, and thank you for joining us. And without further ado, let's just jump in and ask you some good questions.
That'd be good. Well, Don, thanks for agreeing to this. You're one of the first, probably 5 or 6 guests we've had. It's good to have you on, and we've known each other for probably 50 years, literally. So we've done a lot of unbelievable deals, which I'm going to ask you about one or two of during our questions. So I was working on doing our questions on this, and I was started thinking about it, and this first question really kind of applies to both you guys. You're a second generation professional numismatist. What are some of the pros and cons of trying to fill your dad's shoes? And what was that experience like? Because I mean, you guys are both came in where dads were coin dealers, and that's really kind of unusual. Most people, like myself, my dad had nothing to do with coins and nothing to do with a hobby. And I think it's cool that you actually had numismatic mentoring in the family.
Well, first, thank you both for having me on. I'm honored that I'm one of your first guests, and probably oldest, one of the oldest ones that been in the business. And yes, I was born in the business, and I'm truly blessed that happened. But the interesting thing is, I like to say that sure, my father wanted me to be in the business as well as my brother, my sister, etc. But I'm in the business of numismatics in spite of my father,
Yeah.
because while he introduced me to it, and I probably wouldn't have been in if he hadn't, I've had options to do other things, but I have found nothing more exciting, interesting. Thank goodness it's also been lucrative, but something I could be passionate about. And like the two of you both are passionate about what you do in our industry. I like to say, people ask me, well, when are you going to retire or whatever? And I like to say, coin dealers, we don't retire, we just trade away.
Right.
And
Right.
we do. I mean, my father was working 3 days before, on his latest ad, 3 days before he died.
Did you
I mean,
really?
it also kept him sharp. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm 74. I, I'm as excited about my being in the industry and pushing the envelope, as you know, and coming up with innovative things and offering educational opportunities not only to people already in the industry, but outside the industry. So, and then I learned over time, it's not about stepping in my father's shoes. It's about following his path and recognizing where my path diverged. And I'll never be the trader my father was. I mean, he remembered a lot of things, and he was good, very broad based. I'm not going to be that, but I have my own skills and my own areas of seeing the gestalt of the entire industry and being able to leverage that and the relationships, which is so important. I've known you for Jeff for at least 50 years, John a little bit less than that, but it's those relationships that are so important to me.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. I was like, my son now is in the coin business as well, so he's going to be the first, second generation in our family, but he has his own niche. He doesn't try to do what I do because it really is, hard to fill shoes of someone who's doing something totally different and learn it exactly. So the good thing about the hobby of numismatics, that anybody watching this, there's there's hundreds of ways you can make a living in this business, and finding your own niches, I think, really important, and also finding something you love, which you clearly do, and I think that's good. John, what was your kind of experience with that, kind of growing up in
You,
business?
it's so funny. I was
Totally.
as soon as you asked the question, I was thinking about an answer, and then Don essentially said the same answer that I was thinking, and we couldn't have come from more different paths,
Yeah.
except for Don. I had to be careful when I introduced you because art is still in my head. I knew your dad well enough to be thinking when I hear Kagan, I still somehow associate art is Kagan's name, and so I knew him well enough, and I've known you since I was a little kid too. But my dad wasn't as advanced as your father in the business when I started, and I was like a little puppy dog following him around. But like you, I was in the same situation where I didn't think this was going to be my path. I thought I would be, somehow in tech marketing or something like that. And my dream was to work for Apple back in the late 1980s, even. But somehow I got derailed and I became a coin dealer, and I do love it, and I love it more today than I loved it even 5 years ago or 10 years ago. It just becomes richer, like fine wine or something, and this is a great hobby. And we went to the P&G banquet last week. The three of us were all there, and what we gave an award to someone who's a 50-year member or a lifetime achievement to a member who was like 90 years old, and like nobody retires from this business because why would you?
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a great path, and it is a real pleasure having you here, and it's just great. I was admiring our our bookshelves behind us. We have all that in common by
Yeah.
coincidence, I suppose.
You're right. All
Yeah.
three of us.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, we
part of our
love
industry.
books.
Yeah.
And when did you first become a full-time dealer? You said you were looking at other things, and I don't know what those might have been, but then did you, like when were you doing it like, because I started when I was 16, but did you start that early or was it a little bit later on?
Well, I started collecting young, obviously. My father would
But how about being a coin dealer
bring
then?
home things. But as a professional, I would say in the summer of '68, right after I graduated high school, I started working full time in the summers for my father and my uncle, and I actually started cataloging auctions for them
Yeah, I remember the
those
octave.
summers, and then I went to college. Now, as you know, many of you know that when I was a junior, I was you're inducted into a senior honor society, and I was meeting with the provost at Northwestern University, and asking, well, what was my major? I said history, but that's not really what you want. He said, what do you really want? I said numismatics. And he happened to know what that was. He says, you can get that here at Northwestern University. I said,
That's awesome.
what? He says, yeah, look at your folder. We have something called ad hoc majors in the College of Arts and Sciences. You can create your own major if you can find experts that will mentor you here at the university. So I would take courses for the next 2 years in somebody ancients in ancient history, and write articles about the first coins from 675 BC to and the whole history of the coins, and that would be added to my regular requirements. I took probability and statistics and did an article about the 1896 presidential race, which was absolutely, you could draw a straight line, like not on the map, and show where McKinley and the northeastern people had the gold issue, and William Jennings Bryan, who was the nominee for the Democrats and supported the free striking of silver, and there was a big silver issue then, and he created coins, right, as part of his political campaign.
You saw how coins in history just meant.
That's right. So I melded that in all of the different courses I took, and got the first BA in numismatics in the United States. So, but in the meantime, I was still working for my father and uncle in the summers, and then when I graduated college, my father encouraged me, well, why don't you get a doctorate in numismatics? I said, Dad, there's no doctorate in numismatics.
All right.
But it turns out that the
He just
people
really wanted to have a doctor in the family, didn't he?
Well, let's go. What was
Yeah.
your thesis?
He
What
won-
was your thesis about?
Well, actually, indeed. So I had to prove to the only accredited university in the country was a creation called, the undergraduate was called University Without Walls. And the concept was, do not limit your education to the authorities and teachers within the confines of your university. You can find mentors outside anywhere in the world who will teach you and mentor you in an area that you want to become very prolific in. I had to prove that you can't get a doctorate, traditional doctorate, at any other traditional university, and that you would be self-motivated. And that was a 20-page typewritten application. It was very difficult to get in, but I did. And at the age of 26, I was the youngest member of my class, but other people were getting PhDs in polar history, and one person was writing curriculum to be for police chiefs. He was the youngest. There were Wilson scholars and Rhodes scholars and others. So I was very humbled, but my area at the time in 1974 and 5, when I first started on that program, was I wanted to redo the encyclopedia of coins at the time, and to do the pioneer and colonials, but that was too much. So I let go of the colonial section, and I started to concentrate on the pioneer gold, which my father and uncle were into already. So, and that to me was the most interesting area of numismatics, guys, to me, because this is, and no two coins are the same, really. I mean, you can collect silver dollars, but they're all kind of look the same. They're just different dates. To me, part of the romance and of the story of the gold rushes and the different merchants and the items, the coins that they struck were fascinating to me. So I started on my work prior to learning about this opportunity, and that became the basis of my doctoral dissertation, which turned out to be private.
And that book was like the standard reference, forever.
So that became the reference book in 1981, when it first came out.
Yeah.
After I graduated.
So do you know, can people still do what you did? Is that possible for young people, or not young people, but people to get a doctorate in numismatics or a BA? And does that landscape change much? A lot?
Northwestern, 50 years later, when I went there for the 50-year anniversary, I talked to people in the field. They said, listen, yes, if you can find the people to teach you, you could try to put that together again. Right. It takes interest. It's a political system in the universities too. But if you can, it doesn't have to be Northwestern. There may be other universities that will allow you to create your own doctorate program. It wasn't easy.
Right.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like one of the, like I didn't go to college because I got right into coins, and I've had quite a few conversations with some of the next gen that are part of the P&G program, and a lot of them have to make a decision. It's like, God, I'm so good at coins and I can make money. Should I skip college, or my parents would kill me if I didn't go to college, kind of thing. Do you have advice? If you were giving advice to some of these next gens, do you think they should skip college, or you think that's what's your thought on that?
I think it depends on who it is. I mean, you have the Jim Halperns of the world who left Harvard University, or Silvana DiGenova left Wharton School of Economics. Some people who are doctors and lawyers who have gone into numismatics. You need to do what you have a passion for.
Yeah.
My father encouraged me to do the university because it gives you a whole another perspective. And while I kind of knew I was going to be a coin dealer, it has helped me. Right. It has. So, and again, each person's different though. Had I been a great trader like those guys I mentioned, or you too, I mean, maybe I felt I wouldn't have needed it.
Yeah.
But
I think about it myself sometimes. Like, there's some experiences that I could have learned in college that would save me some giant mistakes I made, early in my career. So
we all make giant mistakes. We all do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you're not, you're really not.
You're not trying hard enough.
Because we have to take advantage of opportunities when they come up, and that's a risk.
Yeah.
To pay, $1 million or even $10,000 for a large cent or a $10 bill, takes imagination, risk, etc. And
risk assessment
takes a certain personality. It doesn't have to do with the college education that you have.
Yeah.
Well,
This,
again, it is important for some people, but you have to look at who you are and what your plans are, and even if you don't, where your passion is.
yeah, because I've seen it both ways. There are already some of the next gens, like some have decided just to be full-time coin dealers, have topped in with both feet, and some are doing college and doing coins on the side a little bit. So it's interesting. We see, there's like, what is there now, like 50 of these next gens that are in the program, and it's
Absolutely.
and they're all looking for mentoring. And I got to say, the only difference is these guys are a lot more well behaved than they were when I was young. So that's the big
Well,
difference. So
As
maybe,
far as as far as you know,
as
they
far as
are.
you
as far as I
know.
know, well,
But and I'll throw in my 2 cents about the college. I mean, Don, again, you took every word out of my mouth. I went to college. I went to Virginia Tech for 4 years, and probably lost a lot of money being in college as opposed to being a coin dealer. Although it wasn't apparent to me at that time I would be, but it's a great experience if, as Don says, it's the right experience. If you don't just do something like go to college for 4 years. If you hate the experience, if it's a bad fit for you, and as you said, Jim Halpern, I think, went famously for 1 semester. John Albanese went for 1 semester, and these guys realized that their community, their college community was the numismatic community. I didn't have that community to me at that time, so it was great to go to college. I still have my college friends, so it's situational, and every college is different, and I think everything it evolves. Don, I do think you probably could, get a numismatic degree. Like I know at Brown University, for example, they are a liberal arts college where you define your degree. So maybe you could go there and say, I want to be, I want to write a thesis on numismatics, and it's really cool that you did that and that it became a career for you. I think that's just amazing, and especially in that niche, right? In the Pioneer Gold, for those who are listening and don't realize, Don Kagan is the world's expert on American Pioneer Gold. I mean, this is a very difficult subject. He alluded to that a minute ago, that you could just specialize in this subject of the gold that was made around the gold rush era. He just published a book, and then Whitman is lucky enough to be publishing a subspecialty book from his magnum opus. So we'll post a link to where you can order one of Don's beautiful books today on the bottom of the thread here. But it's an amazing topic, and it goes as deep as you ever want to go, because now you're in the gold rush, now you're in the history of San Francisco. I don't know, Dahlonega, Charlotte, whatever. Oh, I don't even know. I don't know. I'm a trader. I don't know the history of Charlotte and Dahlonega gold. And you and I, Don, talked about it when we were doing the Red Book this year. Beckler, some of these guys like Christopher Beckler and the other Beckler, are they? Tell me something about those guys. Like I get confused. Are they in North Carolina? Were they in Georgia? Tell me something about that.
yeah.
Well, those guys were in North Carolina, but yeah, the story of the gold rushes, of course, is that people during the gold, and our nation's first gold rush was in southern Appalachia. Most people don't know that because California was so much bigger, and then the third one was in Colorado. And but hey, listen, they're mining gold. They have this gold dust. They have nuggets. You have a difficult to use that in commerce, right? You have to weigh it. You have to know the fineness, and it's difficult. So entrepreneurs started to melt down the gold dust and create their own coins, and based on their reputation, like the Becklers later, and starting in Georgia with the Templeton Reed, and these are entrepreneurs, visionaries, people that saw an opportunity, melted down the gold dust, and started to use that in commerce, and that's a great story, and the first book I wrote was in 1981 as part of my doctoral dissertation. It took me 50 some years to do another one, but I have an associate, David McCarthy, who's brilliant, is one of the greatest traders. He's been with me for over 20 years. Well, he can run rings. Thank you very much for what you say about. Yes, I know a little bit about the history of the gold rushes and the coins, but today I'm not the kind of trader that either of you are, and David McCarthy, who helped me write the book, the second edition, because I was building up 40 some years of new information that needed to be disseminated, and come out with a new book. Now, and we did that, and now with Whitman, we're going to be able to distribute that information, including a pricing guide that wasn't in our latest book, to a lot more people, and that I like that because most of us in the coin business, we like sharing. I mean, we like sharing the information. It isn't just
the Red Book when previously when before John and his team bought the Red Book, I would be like, guys, the territorial section is really important because it really is the primary source. If you collect, or if you want to buy a territorial coin, Red Book that's got the pricing guide in it, and it's really super important. It is kind of like the main tool that people would use. But then the pushback I got was the previous people were like, oh, not many people collect those. We really can't devote, we don't want to devote an extra paragraph to whatever. And for that, and I think going forward with the Red Book, we're trying to have more content that's important and tell those stories a little bit, maybe a little bit more about something about that's like that. And in your past, I mean, as a Red Book, you've been a contributor for a long, long time for the territorial section on it. And we've made changes this time with like the fractional California gold. And I just want to see what your thought about the Red Book is, as a tool for using for people, and seeing how it is important just for that series specifically.
Well, it's very important. I mean, we call the Red Book the Bible, and most people don't know that I was involved in going to Racine, Wisconsin, and working with when it was there, when Whit was there, and Ken Brissett was the editor before you, and we would analyze what other people were saying about the values, how they've gone up and before. So I haven't really told that story, but Pioneer Gold, of course, was one of the areas that I was helping him with back in the 70s. This is the late 70s. And it's grown. I mean, but, you're right. I mean, it wasn't really given the kind of space because I guess the thinking was so few people could collect it or would collect it. But again, they represent history, and there probably isn't any more exciting history than our nation's gold rush and the entrepreneurs that came to the needs of the people at the time and for commerce. So I'm glad you're expanding that section and even devoting a specialized book, John, to the Whitman programs, and that Dave Bowers helped for years in the different specialized areas. So now there's a pricing guide that was really needed, and now anyone can get that. So, but Jeff, please, what territory issued Pioneer Gold? California was never a territory.
Yeah.
Beckler's Temple 3, never a territory.
I think it's why they call it private and territorial gold.
Pioneer, private or pioneer would be probably a better name for the series.
Yeah, we haven't been doing them. In the one thing we're doing that we struggle with just recently was John and I were discussing about how much room do we give the gold bars from the SS Central America. You got like an area that's like so important, but realistically, almost no Red Book reader would ever own one. And we tried to tell the story, but I was just wondering, like from your perspective, I mean, you were dealing in private and territorial gold, and all of a sudden, SS Central America shows up. That's still like one of the most earth-shattering. It's like the King Tut of coin discoveries, and I'm sure that really rocked your world when that happened.
Well, indeed it did, because the SS Central America went down in 1857, and there were a lot of Pioneer Gold on there. So I ended up being a talking head for some of the presentations. I ended up dealing with a lot of that material, and as you know, Dwight Manley and the California Marketing Group ended up buying most of that treasure to market. And one of the things I suggested to him, and by the way, the answer is great historical, and yes, we have books on it, large books on it by Dave Bowers and others, but it's an important historical snapshot of what items were numismatic items and coins were were trading at the time. And so that needs to be told, but it doesn't have to be told in depth to the extent that other books are, of course. But it is an important story. And one of the stories of the ingots that many people probably don't know is that I just happened to have at the time one of the most important numismatic artifacts, and that was the original dies from 1855 of Kellogg and Company of their $50 gold piece, which were only made in proofs, right? I happened to have those dies in my possession, and I suggested to Dwight that, there are hundreds of these bars and ingots that, only a few people could own. I suggested that he melt down many of those bars of Kellogg and Company and refashion them into restrikes not from the original dies, but from transfer dies, so you wouldn't hurt the original dies, and to strike those and sell those, and he kept the top of the ingots that had all the information about the fineness and weight, etc., and those have been sold too. Yeah. But the rest, he did melt them down. He did buy my dies, which I bought back from him later after he made the transfer dies, and so there's that part of that story that probably hasn't been told.
Really cool. I've got one in my collection, my personal collection. I didn't want to spend $250,000 in a bar, but I bought one of the faceplates from it. I think they're just really a great item. I had to confess, though, I took it out the other day and weighed it to see what it's worth at $3,000 gold.
Yeah.
When they came out, gold was $300. A lot of people realize that.
I'm glad you kept it.
Yeah, I mean, they bought it at $300 gold.
Yeah,
Don, I have a quick.
Go ahead.
I have a quick. Don, I have a quick question for you about this. That just when you were telling that story is very interesting, and it'll show some of my ignorance. Is why would in 1855 Kellogg, a private minter of coins, have a proof die? Like, what was their purpose? You make proofs for collectors, do we not? For presentation pieces, were they giving this? Did they make a $50 coin to give to somebody? There are very few. Why would they do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are very few proof coins, pioneer coins. Moffat had one, Assay Office some. Don't know for sure. We think it was in anticipation of making regular dies to see what they're going to look like, or maybe not. Remember, the Assay Office was still open. The mint was open in 54, but it had to close from time to time for lack of proper alloy and acids. Finally, the mint in 56, said, okay, we can stay open. We don't have to have private gold coins anymore, which were a substitute for a while the mint was trying to get their act together. So that's why you see 1855, 1854, 5 private gold coins from.
Well, that reminds me. So you're saying that did Kellogg strike at the San Francisco Mint? Is that fact number one, or am I wrong about that?
Kellogg was striking. Kellogg was striking coins in 54 and 55 and were 20s, and then they were going to do a 50. I think that the 50 was just anticipating a short run anyway, because the mint was going to get their act together, and there wasn't going to, and in fact they did, and then there was a prohibition against private gold coins after that. But I don't know exactly the answer. I don't know why they issued a proof and a regular.
Yeah, but they made a 55s quarter and $half proof, right? They're unique. I sold it with the Richmond collection in 2004. I mean, I'm just putting some pieces together, but I always thought those were very odd because, and I think there's a 55s proof 3. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, there is.
So something was going on maybe that connects all that together. But anyway, I didn't mean to hijack this conversation that way.
Yeah. Well, one thing's for sure, they're definitely proofs. You look at them, They're glittering
Yeah.
proofs.
No,
It's
And,
also,
and the restrikes were fantastic. They actually trade semi-numismatically today. I mean, you'll see them at various auctions from time to time, and they're beautiful coins. So Dwight did a heck of a good job making those, and it was interesting. And I recall them. Of course, I've never seen a real 50, but I've seen the restrikes.
yeah. Well,
So
Don, one of the why we're still talking about territorial gold is
Pioneer Gold.
Pioneer and territorial. Okay,
we're breaking we're breaking new ground
I'm
here.
learning. I'm learning. It's hard to teach someone a new
It's
trick
hard.
in years.
It's hard.
But one of the most fantastic things I've ever bought and sold in my whole career, I sold to you, was a set of T Reed gold, and it was part of the Dukes Creek collection of Georgia gold. It was a complete set of gold dollars, 2.5s, a 3, and a 5s, and it's unbelievable condition. But there were also, when a lot of times I haven't told this story, but when we were trying to put that deal together, selling you that set of T Reed gold is kind of like what it kind of got it over the hump and be able to buy the rest of the deal. And can talk a little bit about this real briefly about those coins, how important they are, and where they ended up. Because I don't. That's an interesting. I think those are just unbelievable coins.
So in 1830, Templeton Reed was a cotton gin manufacturer, and he realized there was an opportunity to melt down some gold from the gold rush that started about a few months earlier in southern Appalachian, in Gainesville, and in Georgia. So he melted down the gold and made these 2.5, 5s, and 10s, and one of the finest collections ever put together was your Dew Creek collection that we were. Thank you very much for selling to us. We have obviously cultivated collectors who are interested in the finest, and in this case the first Pioneer Gold coin. So most all that was sold intact to one client. He had some
Still got
duplicates, so and he
Person still has them.
it's still in that collection.
Wow.
So
They were awesome.
someday-
I'd like to see them again someday. They were just
I would too.
a really
You know.
neat piece. Well, I hope that you get a chance to handle them again, because that's the great thing about placing coins. So
Thank you. Many of the items in our book, some of the iconic items, we've handled 2, 3, sometimes 4 times.
Great.
And I've been very blessed. I mean, some of them are,
Yeah.
I think on a coin basis, on a series, these are the most expensive and valuable of all series of numismatics. It's like almost 10 grand for a decent, even a Beckler coin,
And these T Reed pieces are $1 million pieces.
There you go. So there's several $1 million plus coins in that series. So
Great.
difficult series to put together. I get vicarious pleasure of doing that, like we all do with their building collections for our clients. And I get to see some of these great iconic coins over and over again. So
That's kind of that's good. That's kind of a good pro tip for the young people who may watch this and are going to be in the business for a long time. It's fun to buy and sell a coin with a wholesale, but you wholesale a coin, you're never going to see it again, and you have a chance to retail something. You might see it 4 or 5 times in your lifetime. So that's a good lesson to think about when you're selling coin, doing business.
That's right. I consider it a kind of not an annuity, but retirement plan. You place it, you treat your clients well, they'll come back to you, or if they perceive that you have an expertise in the field.
Big advantage.
But by the way, I've sold a lot of these coins wholesale, and I have an opportunity to buy them back either in an auction or some other collection too. So we do a fair amount of wholesale business too.
Well, speaking of Pioneer, I'll make sure I get it right. So tell us about your world oldest Pioneer presentations, the coin shows. I haven't seen you do one in a while, but
I think I introduced them at an ANA convention, back in the 80s or something. So I got my doctorate in 79. I started to do ANA summer seminars, and I would lecture about Pioneer Gold at various coin clubs and seminars. And I'm going, all right. I had some pictures or whatever. I said, but it's more exciting story than just getting up there and talking about it. Well, I was an amateur thespian. I was in some theater in Des Moines, Iowa, in high school in Des Moines,
I never knew
and
that.
amateur theater. So I thought, wow, I can combine numismatics and my favorite series and present it in a way that people will remember. And the interesting thing is, and so I came up with of a costume of a miner at the time, uh, changed my voice a little, and told the story in the first person like a Forrest Gump type of thing. I was there, but I never got recognized, right?
Right.
So it was in chronological order. So I start by working for Templeton Reed and giving them the idea and going forward. And the Mormons who came, who actually were the first ones to strike gold from the California gold rush and told that story. And I'm able to do that in the first person. And the interesting thing is, Jeff and John, when you're giving lectures and talks and seminars, people remember more when they're entertained. I learned a lot about our World War things because I watch movies about it, right? And things. So interesting enough, when I would question or quiz my class at summer seminar, for instance, about, well, now, who were the first people to issue coins? They knew because they learned it there. I'd never prompt them to take notes, just to have fun and listen. But because I was able to entertain them, they remembered. And so I did it again. One of my areas I mentioned of interest was colonial currency and coins.
Yeah.
So I dressed up like a Ben Franklin type and in full costume and makeup again and told the story again as if I was there, at Somers Island, with Somers and the story of the first coins in the New World, and then take it into New England and whatever, and told that story.
Right.
And so, and to this day, I still get people saying, "Oh, I remember you told it." So,
I remember.
so I was able to combine a couple of my interests at the same time.
Yeah, coin collecting, the magic of coin collecting is storytelling, and about the books, and that's why I like doing it. And you're taking it to the that level with acting and thing. I think that's fantastic because I still remember seeing it a couple of times myself, and that's why I brought it up. It's and I'm sure a lot of young people had an impact on him.
No, both of those alter egos have been retired for a while, but we'll see if there's an opportunity down the road. My children and my grandchildren have seen it,
Yeah.
so
Well,
maybe there's a few that have yet to see it. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
You brought up A&A a couple of times, and I know you've been really involved in A&A for a long, long, long time. And I know there's an Art Kagan reading room, for instance, and your family's been involved, and you guys got the philanthropy award there. Tell us about the A&A and why you're kind of a supporter of that, and what your feelings are on the A&A.
A&A is the largest coin club in the world. My interests have been educational. I learned a lot from being a member of A&A. I still do. And when I was asked to start doing seminars in the 70s, some of my students now are full-time coin dealers and have been for many, many years.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's the same for you. I mean, it giving back often is so worthwhile and gives me pleasure, but I also have to stay a step ahead of your students. So I'm also refreshing and learning things. So A&A has been excellent as a provider of numismatic education, information, and as an organization, it has grown. And now we have you can have numismatics not only on your hand, money in your hand, or in your hand, but also on your phone.
Yeah.
So you can be educated. That was one of the things that I advocated while I was on the board uh, uh,
Yeah, I
for
remember
several
being
years.
some education committee calls with you. You were even trying to promote college classes for A&A, right? At one time, I remember we're working on that.
Of classes
Yeah, classes.
and
Yeah,
potential. You know,
yeah. I was doing.
yeah, I've written some curriculum
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your efforts. Like,
and also
yeah, especially
yeah
teaching
also
classes because I know how much
go
work
ahead. I'm sorry.
it was. Teaching those classes is a lot of work, and I appreciate your effort you did in that.
Yeah, and we mentioned P&G before, and P&G we created a mentor program where we had for vocational training, where individual young numismatists, well, it could be anybody who wanted to become a professional would spend 4 months. When we had some classes that they could take online, and then they can at different levels to learn about the industry as a professional, and then go spend 4 months at a grading firm, 4 months at an auction house, and 4 months at a coin shop, and that and as a result of that, a number of people were hired into the industry. Now we have the next gen, which is even more robust and bigger than we had it. That was like 20 years ago, I guess. So I'm excited about that
Yeah,
too.
yeah. Lots of great.
So A&A, P&G, both the
Yeah, yeah.
great
Yeah,
great institutions.
we have to as old timers in this business. What can't be more important now is to meet people where they are, and so back in the 70s and 80s, 90s, you would go to summer seminar. Summer seminar still exists today, very robust, but not everybody can make it.
Great.
So there's this whole thing with next gen or these other educational programs. The video we're doing today, I mean, hopefully inspire someone to understand what this a little more about the layers of this industry that otherwise, I mean, if the three of us don't get together, then it just doesn't seem to get talked about. And I think that's really important to me. And that's why it's just wonderful to be here with you, Don and Jeff, because I just want to make sure we connect with this wider audience because it's never really I think from I don't have empirical data. I don't have a hard number for you, but the hobby feels bigger now than it has in decades
Yeah.
in sheer numbers of people who are interested in coins. And I think we can thank the internet for this exposure. But then again, we have a duty, we're duty bound to inform people because there aren't the usual barriers to entry that we experience. The barrier to entry for me and for Jeff, for you, Don, I'm sure, was going to a lot of coin shows and getting beat on the head, buying coins for too much money, finding out an hour later that you made a mistake. We didn't even have third party grading in those earlier days. We would buy a coin as XF. The next guy would tell you it had a hole in it and been repaired. And so you learned. You learn not to make that mistake again. And so now, what are people coming in, 40 years after the grading services? It's a whole different world, and the mistakes are different. The mistakes you can make today are about payment fraud or this or that or the other, and so we're all here to share and give some wisdom, and then I think learn from these young people at the same time because they can teach us a lot too.
Yeah.
But
Teach
so
about
so
new
it's,
tools all the time. That's for sure. And also, I think
yeah.
what we all do as a group of information is there's so much misinformation out there. It's good that these people can learn from us that really know, what we have from experience. We know what about a lot of the history about coins and things that we can teach because there's, the internet's a wonderful thing, but there's also so much in social media and stuff that's misinformation. So it's good that we're, making an effort, through the Whitman publishing empire to put out great information, that people can use it. And speaking of great information, I wanted to mention Dave McCarthy. He's just my experience with him, he's just really brilliant. And what I call, he's kind of not unique because there's other ones like him, but he does original research, which I think is really cool. It's like so much numismatic research is kind of like, retelling stories and doing things. I mean, tell me a little bit. I mean, I see he'll like say, oh, I found this in a 1858 San Francisco something something. And, does he like have his nose in the books like, hours a day doing that? I mean, that numismatic original research is incredible.
Well, he is amazing. Thank you for mentioning that. I lucked out when I hired him. Um, he was working on as a counter guy at another coin firm, and I needed I needed a top trader, um, and somebody recommended him to me, and vice versa, and we got together. What is, and this is, my father was still alive at the time, and he learned a little bit from dad, and maybe a little bit from me, but now he has a photographic memory, especially for numismatics. But he also, like some other people in the coin industry, has a pretty good knowledge of guitars and violins, things that he just picked up. He immerses himself, and he can read in literature and history and the internet and art. He's gone to archives, which is what he did when he was researching for the first U.S. coin, the quint, and he just has that talent. And then he has a talent for grading and for communicating. And so he's been going every year to the summer seminar for years, teaching grading and other seminars. So, and then he happens to like Pioneer Gold. So I wonder where he got that from. But like I said, he can run rings around me on
I love his
on
original
value.
research. He has a regular
He
column now.
does all that. You're
He
right.
has a
You're
regular
right. Yeah.
column in the Numismatics. I really enjoy reading that. So that's one of the main articles I enjoy reading, and then see what he's kind of like come up with some original story he found, like digging through something, and it's kind of fun to see that.
Hmm.
Yes, it's not rehashing what's already been written. Doing
Right.
original research is important. He loves it. He has a passion for it, and he's very good at it. And that's one of the reasons he's a columnist for the numismatist.
Yeah. One of the, we're getting kind of running low on time now. I want to ask you a little bit because it's in your backyard a little bit. What do you think about the Long Beach coin show, kind of like being discontinued, and the West Coast like avoiding coin shows? Because I know you from going to coin shows. You know, I've been seeing you at coin shows a couple of times a month for, you know, or less now, but we did that for decades. I mean, it kind of alarms me that we don't have a West Coast coin show anchor now.
So I've been going to the Long Beach since 1972,
Yeah.
and it's changed a bit since then, and 3 times a year, right?
Yeah.
So I've been going a lot. I'm, hopefully maybe they at least have one a year, maybe in February. They've talked about that. I don't know what the economics were, but clearly it wasn't good enough to keep it going as it is. Maybe somebody will come up with another substitute because we don't have any major West Coast shows now.
Right.
So, yeah,
A lot of
and
collectors in California, so it's a big void. So, and I just liked going somewhere warm in February, so I miss it for that reason. So that was
well,
nice.
John talks about how important the internet has become, and things really picked up during COVID too, and then people were able to have meetings online and now and so you can still interact that way, but there's just nothing like being at a show and being
Totally.
with people and talking to them. That I don't think will ever end. Certainly hope not,
No, I
because it is about relationships in our industry. It isn't just about going online or doing something on the phone, whatever. So I think if there's continues to be a demand for this, Jeff, somebody will step into the void and have a show. If not not Southern California, maybe Las Vegas, maybe San Francisco again, although it's a very expensive venue. We had for years the Jack Tar
yeah.
show, as you know, that people came out from all over the country. Became a little bit too expensive, and you need, especially in a club show, you need those spark plugs. You need those people who will really make it happen. You know
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's
The
most of these
front people have
organizations,
done that. A and A.
10% of people do 90% of the work. So
Yeah. So somebody, maybe a club, but there are people who are talking about filling the void, and I hope that happens because
yeah,
we need that.
yeah, that would be good. Getting near the end, because I think you're always seem to be, I don't know how to put it, like futurist a little bit. You think about things or involved. What kind of mega trends do you see maybe affecting the hobby in the next few years, or I don't know, this next generation numismatic? You see like any informational trends or anything that's interesting that you see in the hobby going on?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
So we've talked about this. We've introduced yes, I like pushing the envelope, Peter and Max on the cover of an auction catalog, or
Yeah.
the Saddle Ridge Hoard, and working with Amazon. So, you know, another opportunity has come along, and we have partnered with a company that's in the crypto world and NFTs, and non-fungible tokens, to offer shares or fractionalization of numismatic material. This has never been done before. There's been fractionalization, but in this case, it's secured by blockchain technology. And that's what an NFT is, basically, is a digital receipt that you have this unique item or share of a major numismatic item. This will become much bigger. Every day I'm learning about this industry, because over a month ago, I'm not a crypto guy, I'm a hard asset guy, right?
Right.
But there is an industry out there, and there's a lot more people out there that can be and will be exposed to numismatics. And now you're going to have an opportunity for individual collectors to be an owner in iconic item. You've handled a 13 Liberty nickel. What if somebody wants to be an owner of a 13 Liberty nickel, or at least a share of it, or an 1804 dollar, or something like that? So we started with a $100,000 unique $100,000 specimen gold certificate from 1934. So now people who couldn't afford hundreds of thousands of dollars for a numismatic item will now be able to own part of that. And we're trying to make it a tangible experience as well as a digital experience.
Yeah.
So I see that,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying this just because Kagan's is doing this now, but I see other people participating in that area.
Yeah.
The fractionalization of numismatic iconic material,
Yeah.
I think, is the next evolution in our industry.
It could be interesting. My daughter and son-in-law actually have been doing it for a while. They do fractional ownership of racehorses, because the racehorses are like mega expensive, and they're like the expensive lottery tickets. Basically, if you buy a horse for 100,000, it's a 90% chance it's worth nothing. But they'll buy like $100 share of like one or two horses, and they like to go to the races, watch it, and if the horse wins, they get invited to the winner's circle, even though they have $100 share. So, it's I could see that. That's an interesting. I think that it'll be fun to bring you back in 6 months or a year and see how that played out for you. And it, I give you credit for giving it a shot and being in different arenas, but there's always going to be something new that's going to change our hobby, and you never know what next thing will be. That could bring in something. Make it fun to be collecting coins.
Well, let's talk again in 6 months and see if it works.
Sure.
You don't know until you make it. You talk about those people who have been around for 50 years, like you and I, and John for a little bit less. You have to take shots at times to move the industry, move yourself, move your business. Things change, right?
Yeah.
I've thrown a lot against the wall. Some stick, some don't. A lot don't.
Some
But
stick and smell.
I love the pushing the envelope and trying out things. I'm not afraid to do that.
Yeah.
And
It's great.
yeah, it's been fun.
It's good. That's what keeps you young.
Well-
You never know what the next phone call's about. So
Right. And that's why you're a good coin dealer. Because that's right. I think that does really sum it up and bring it full circle. Is that the risks that we take as coin dealers are rather unique to most businesses. I mean, the people who own a coffee shop or a bookstore, they don't have that same kind of daily experience. Like, I'm just going to take a great chance. At a coin show, we might be offered 100 different, maybe 1,000 different opportunities to buy something, not buy something, and that's just something that's really unique to our little business.
Well, John, I'll share this with you. My father, when I talked to my father about getting involved in the stock market and whatever, he says, if you're going to take a risk, he says, I want to be, or in a casino or whatever, I want to be the house. You're
Right.
Good,
we're
yeah.
the house. We set the rules pretty much, and as our industry, and we know firsthand what these things are worth pretty much, right?
Right.
Why go to another industry where somebody else is the insider, right? So Dad convinced me early on, this is as good a risk that you're going to have because you get to be the house.
Yeah, play with your
I like that.
play with your skills.
Play
So
with your own.
well, we really appreciate
Yeah.
you sharing your history and also just your it's not like talking to some old retired guy. It's nice to talk to someone who's been doing it for 50 years but still has plans for a lot more.
A lot
Got
more.
30
Yeah.
years left for sure.
Well, 20 anyway. We'll see.
That's good.
All right.
Well,
Thank you for having me on, guys.
Thank you for joining us. This was a great conversation, and we look forward to the book coming. And I want to please send us a video of you dressed up as the Pioneer
Yeah.
Man. That will be
All right.
bonus rounds. Okay,
Thanks.
have a great
Thank you.